So, good evening, everyone. This is Yvonne Larson of Big Jolly Politics. And on the phone with me this raining Sunday evening is Wayne Thompson. Wayne Thompson is in the Republican runoff for Fort Bend County Precinct 3 Constable. Wayne, how are you today? Have you dried off from all of the wet weather?
Yes, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. And we were out block walking today until we got soaked. And then, yes, we're all dried off and we're ready to hit early voting tomorrow. So thanks again for having me this evening.
Oh, it's my pleasure. For voters that might not be familiar, tell and are listening to you and hearing you for the first time, tell us a little bit about the March primary race and how you and the incumbent ended up in a runoff.
Sure. In the March primary, we had four candidates, the incumbent, myself, and two others. And when you're in a race with four people, it's very difficult to secure 50% of the vote, which no one did. The incumbent got roughly 35%. I got about 26%, and the other two gentlemen were below that 26% number. So that put me in a runoff with the 28-year incumbent. And we feel very positive that we're in a good spot. One of the other gentlemen has already endorsed me, and we're trusting that we will do well. So that's how we ended up in this runoff, and we're along with a few other runoffs in Fort Bend, including a railroad commissioner and one of the judges. So it's been a long road, but 65% of the voters made it very clear that they wanted change in the Precinct 3 Constable's office. 65% voted for someone other than the incumbent. So that's how we ended up where we're at today.
Well, great. Thanks a lot, Wayne. You've really articulated also why it's important for Fort Bend County residents, not even just Precinct 3 residents, to show up and vote in the runoff with early voting starting tomorrow. But let's talk a little bit about Fort Bend County Precinct 3, especially for our listeners across the state of Texas that might not be familiar with the geographic coverage of Fort Bend County Precinct 3. So could you talk to us a little bit about where Fort Bend County Precinct 3 is, maybe including the cities that are within Precinct 3?
Sure. So Precinct 3 is the fastest growing part of Fort Bend County. It's not the largest land mass, but it is the fastest growing with people. And the area itself covers the part of Fort Bend that meets up with Harris and Waller counties. Those include the cities of Simonton, Katy. Now, of course, Katy's in 3 counties, but a portion's in Fort Bend. It includes Fulshear, and then some other areas that aren't cities, but that people will recognize as Weston Lakes, Pecan Grove, and the Cinco Ranches. So there's about 250,000 people in Precinct 3. Not all of those are voters, but that's the approximate population, and that's intended to rise. And of course, Fulshear is expected to outgrow Sugar Land in the next 10 years. So we are dealing with one of the most populated and growing areas. And of course, it encompasses part of Grand Parkway, I-10, and 1093. So a lot of new families moving in there, a lot of new voters, and that's the general demographics for you.
And thanks for bringing that up, Wayne, because a lot of people who might live in, say, the city of Houston or a very large city are familiar with, the local police force, say like, the Sugar Land Police or HPD or Missouri City Police. Can you talk to us a little bit about the roles and responsibility of a constable's office, including maybe the kind of the organizational structure and what the duties are of the deputies that would work underneath you?
Sure. So kind of a big question, but there's a lot of new folks to this area. So the Texas Constitution does require that every county has at least one elected sheriff and one elected constable. Most of the counties will have a constable elected for each precinct. Fort Bend has 4. Harris County has 8. The constables do not answer to the sheriff. They are completely distinct offices. And one of the primary duties of the constable's office is to serve civil process and kind of be the enforcement arm of the courts. You asked for the top 3 duties. I'll say that's definitely one of them, but we have to remember that constables and their deputies are peace officers also. And kind of like the Marine Corps says, every Marine is a rifleman. It doesn't matter if you're a cook or a truck driver. Similarly here, every peace officer should be dealing with enforcing all laws, federal, state, and local, and that is a primary duty. And then, of course, thirdly, to protect the citizens. So enforce the laws, civil process, and protect the citizens is kind of what it boils down to. They don't answer the sheriff, separate department, but constables do provide patrol. They provide extra coverage. They provide bailiff duties. They also serve the civil process. And then the second part of your question is kind of how are they organized. Each constable's office has the one elected constable, which is elected by the voters in Precinct 3 or whatever precinct they're in. And then the constable has a chief deputy, which in Precinct 3, that's currently unfilled. And then they have a patrol lieutenant and a civil lieutenant. And then they have several sergeants and a patrolman. Currently, right now, Precinct 3 has 44 commissioned deputies, which means they're peace officers, and has a civilian staff of 3. One other thing I'd like to add to that is, under the current leadership, 50% of those deputies quit every year, and the entire command staff of the current constable quit in the last 13 months. So there's a lot of unfilled positions right now. But that answers your top 3 duties and then kind of how they're organized and what they should be doing.
Thanks, Wayne. So we're talking a little bit about, 45 patrol officers. What do the officers, as far as, say, circumstances, crimes, what do they encounter on a day-to-day basis?
Mm-hmm. Well, out of those commissioned, there's going to be several that work solely in the civil division. So those people will deal with eviction, serving court process, paperwork, sometimes repossessions. There's some other things that those people would focus on solely. And then there's the patrol deputies that would provide law enforcement services on a contractual basis to municipal utility districts, homeowners associations, and commercial districts. And those guys and gals would be responsible for all forms of law enforcement, including making traffic stops, writing tickets, making arrests, patrolling neighborhoods, and just a full array of law enforcement duties. So you have the civil side and the patrol side.
Wonderful. You mentioned that you've been out block walking. Oh gosh, it seems like for months. What are Precinct 3 residents telling you are the top issues on their minds?
Wonderful question. The first thing that we have run into with almost everyone we talk to is they want to know who their constable is and what they're supposed to be doing. The constable is not a high-profile position. Generally, people know what the sheriff does and what the governor does and what the commissioners do, but a lot of folks don't know what the constable does. So number one question we've had is they are concerned that they don't know or haven't seen their constable. Secondly, their safety. They're worried about the safety of their families and their children. And then third, in Precinct 3, oddly enough, is mobility. Vehicle traffic, increased accident rates, and people getting to and from work and business and school. If you've been out in this area lately, you'll know that it is just a huge traffic mess, and so that's a prime concern has been mobility. So those are the top 3.
And so, follow-up question, what about the business owners that you've spoken with as you've been out around in Precinct 3? What have they shared with you?
Some of these are a little bit similar. One has been the safety of their businesses and, of course, their customers. The second one has also been mobility. They are concerned about customers being able to get to and from their places of business and their business establishments. It's just getting tough to drive around on Grand Parkway and 1093 and I-10, and that is affecting business owners' profitability. And then also, the thirdly is the lack of response to calls for service. In Precinct 3, the constable will not respond to commercial district calls. So in other words, if he has a contract in Cinco Ranch, but there is a commercial area, restaurants, businesses, he will not respond to those. So even if there is a close constable's deputy, they will wait until a sheriff's office deputy makes location, which could be 45 minutes to an hour. So business owners don't like that. They feel like if the constable is in that area and they elected him, that he should be able to provide a response. So mobility, safety, and then having a responsive law enforcement agency in their area.
So you bring up a really good point. What's the solution to the business owner's concern that the constable cannot respond to the issue?
Well, the solution is this. If I take office, we will respond. We will serve everyone equally in Fort Bend County Precinct 3, whether we have a contract with them or not. The contracts are for supplemental services, but it doesn't ban us from responding to other calls. The constable should be a force multiplier to the sheriff's office. And quite frankly, when you call 911 for help, you don't care what agency that person is with, what car they're driving, or what uniform they're wearing. You just want the help. So that's how I'll change that. I'm
sure the listeners to this interview would agree wholeheartedly. Let me move on to maybe our last two items. One pertains to a little bit of controversy on social media over the past couple of months about two, deputies or patrolmen in Precinct 3 and the allegations that they've been locked out of their law enforcement system. Can you talk to the residents of Precinct 3 a little bit about that?
Certainly. I am aware of that. I'm aware that the sheriff's office took action against 2 or 3 deputies that work for the Precinct 3 constable's office, and they essentially locked them out of the record-keeping system and what we would call a mobile data terminal or computer-aided dispatch system. I will have to say this. I'm not an agency administrator in Fort Bend. I'm not privy to personnel disciplinary issues. I was made aware of this through an open records request that I made, but I just don't have the disposition as to whether or not they have been allowed access again or not. The voters really need to call the sheriff, and then they need to call Constable Cook and find out where that's at. I just don't have that information.
Well, that's fair enough, Wayne. And I guess as we're getting ready for early voting to commence, tomorrow? Maybe you could wrap up and let the listeners maybe hear a couple of sentences of what do you want to tell the voters of Fort Bend County Precinct 3, or maybe just voters of Fort Bend County overall as we wrap up the interview?
Sure. Thanks for that. And really the biggest thing is this. The incumbent has been in office 28 years, and in those 28 years, he has never been endorsed by any elected law enforcement official in Fort Bend County or any police association in Fort Bend County. I have been able to get every single one of those endorsements, bipartisan, might I add, from Republicans and Democrats. And I think the voters need to do some real soul searching and fact finding and decide for themselves why would that be. I'm the only candidate that has ever been able to do that in Fort Bend County, not just in a precinct race, but in any race. This campaign is about teamwork and leadership, and we are way past the days of agencies just doing their own little thing and acting like they're an island. The constables and the sheriff need to work together seamlessly, and every one of them do, with the exception of Precinct 3. And this is not just under Sheriff Nails. This was same under Sheriff Milton Wright. So this is not a personal thing. This is something that's been built into the mindset of that current official. 28 years, in my opinion, is too long. And in the Republican Party, we keep preaching term limits, term limits. It's time for a new vision, somebody that can work with others and that can lead the people at the agency so that we can serve the public, the entire precinct. Runoff voting is usually very low turnout. And remember, 65% of the people ask for change, and if they want that change to come to fruition, they need to get out and vote all this week, Monday through Friday, and then May 24th is Election Day. I would appreciate their support.
Well, great, Wayne. Thanks so much for the opportunity to let the voters of Fort Bend County Precinct 3 hear your voice, hear what you have to say, and I'm sure you'll be some of our other big jolly listeners across the state now know a little bit about what's going on down in Fort Bend County and know a little bit about your race as well. So thanks again for checking in with us after a soggy, rain-soaked Sunday. And good luck to you. When does early voting start, and when is Election Day runoff day?
Yes, ma'am. Early voting starts tomorrow morning, the 16th through the 20th at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Fort Bend County voters can vote at any voting location on early voting and Election Day, which is May 24th. So they have Monday through Friday this week and then Tuesday next week. And we always encourage people to early vote because the weather sometimes doesn't cooperate on Election Day.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to have any more any Election Day floods or anything to interrupt the opportunity for the voters to cast their ballots. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. This was Wayne Thompson of Fort Bend County Precinct 3 Constable in his runoff election starting tomorrow. And good luck to you, Wayne.
Thank you.